Good morning. Would you join me in prayer? Father, we thank you for a beautiful day, beautiful fall day today that you've given us. And Father, we just pray that you would just be in the midst of all that we're going to do today. We thank you for a school system that honors you. First of all, Father, we just thank you for a school system that loves kids. And Father, we pray that this morning as we talk about bright futures, that you will just inspire us. Father, we pray that we would be excited about what's happening in our school system. And Father, we pray your blessings on all that happens here today. And we just pray your blessings on our schools, our teachers, our administrators, and especially the kids. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Just to keep the program moving, we're going to go ahead. So, take your time and eat, and as you come through the line. But we're going to move forward. We are. I know that your time is valuable, and we do appreciate you coming in today for this to talk about bright futures. And I'll pull my notes up here a little bit. Where did Bright Futures start with Poplar Bluff? Well, we started recently here, but the history of Bright Futures started in Joplin, and we have a lot of folks with us today that we're in that first program there at Joplin. But Joplin had the Board of Education, Dr. C.J. Huff, pulled together his community to rally around really improving graduation rates. And what he found out that those who dropped out and those who were on the verge of dropping out, there was nothing more that school could have done. It was something that needed to be a group effort from the community to keep these children in school. And so as that moved on and started that program, they went through the tornado that everyone's heard of, and then Bright Futures was very important in getting that community back together, and especially that school going. After that time, they presented at the Missouri School Board Association, and Dr. Matt Riffle, along with many of our other board members, came back to our school from that conference and was very interested in the movement of Bright Futures. So in the summer of 2014, our Board of Education approved for us to become an official affiliate. One of the first things we did was develop a local board, advisory members, and they are from the business sector, the faith-based organization, human service, and parents. And at this time, I'd like to recognize our advisory board members. If you would, please stand. Yeah. Thank you. Bright Futures is not a funded program. It's an initiative to bring all the community together with resources of our community to help the needs of our students. Much like the crayons on your tables, and some of our students are broken, and they're quite different and unique. Until their basic needs are met, education is not their priority. If I could move to slide 3, please. Slide 3, we're not a funded program. We're an umbrella, and we're just here to try to focus the needs of our students and the resources of our community and our business, and to pull everything together for our students. So that's our purpose. If you move on, please. On October 17th, 2014, thanks to the Murphy family and Gamma, we held our first breakfast here and kicked off Bright Futures. Volunteers at that kicked off signed up to be ambassadors and go to each school to ask to find out what their individual needs of the school and students were. We developed site councils in each school, 10 schools, that consisted of these community members representing business, faith-based, human service, parents, and school staff. We have site council members from each school. If you're a member of a site council of one of our schools, would you please stand? Thank you. Thank you very much for helping. We also launched our Bright Futures Facebook. And if we can move, yeah. And we currently have 1,600 likes. If you haven't done so, please get your phone out or whatever and like this page so that you can get the information. It's amazing how this process works to get the need completed with our students, rapid response. I'll give you a slide 5 there. This is an example of how our Facebook page gets the word from the community to what our students are needed. Within 30 minutes, someone had a water heater they were willing to donate, and 2 others that were willing to help the dad install it right through our Facebook page. So again, on behalf of the Bright Futures Advisory Board, PB Schools, our partnered friends, I'd like to thank you for being here today. Our schools and teachers need support in their efforts to graduate our kids. Our community is very caring and giving and always has. If they know what the needs are, they always find a way to make it happen, and we want to be that avenue for you. There is a bright yellow paper on your table. If there's ways that you can help, if you would like to take that paper and please fill that out. If you look it over, and you can find the areas that fit your current situation so that you can help in our Bright Futures, and someone will contact you to help. Getting back to our symposium, what we wanted to do was bring some people in that have already been in this Bright Future process and talk to you about the different areas that they are in. And again, we do thank them for coming and making the trip over here and helping us with our process. We're very proud of where we are, but we think we can move further and to help more students. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Carrie Crothers. Carrie Crothers is from the business manager for Priority Investors and American Century Investments, and she is currently a member of the Bright Futures Board in Harrisonville.
Good morning. On behalf of Bright Futures USA, I want to thank you for allowing us to come and share our stories with you. I'm also a member of the Bright Futures USA board and serve as the board secretary. I do have my phone up here just because we are under time, and I understand from other Bright Future breakfast launches, time is important and we want to stay on schedule, so I'll be looking at my phone to keep me true to that time. I'm going to talk about Bright Futures Harrisonville. We launched 3 years ago, and right now, this very moment, we're having our annual breakfast. And it's an honor to come and share the great things that we've done over the last 3 years to get our community involved, but more importantly, to share needs, various needs that we have in our own community. And the one thing that I always share with people is to get involved, because it's not always about the basic needs. Some people say, I just don't know that I have the time to share with a child that may have some sort of discipline issue or needs extra help or mentoring. I don't have the ability to do that. And it's not always about meeting that need. Sometimes it's really about meeting just the overall enrichment of all the children within your community so they feel supported and loved by every community member. When they walk down the street, is there something special that you can do or say, or give a hug to a child that really feels left out or singled out in various situations? Last year at our breakfast, we actually launched what we call the My 42 initiative. And on our Facebook page and our Twitter page, we use the hashtag My42. And the purpose of that is, based on a study that was done, people who volunteer are 42% more likely to say they are very happy than people who don't volunteer. So that was really our focus, to use the My 42 as an effort to spread awareness about Bright Futures and what adults can do within their community to help support any need that a child has. Some of these needs are getting each other involved and understanding the service learning aspect. Maybe you're a child of a privileged family and you don't have needs that need to be met, but we also want to help bring into parity children that do have those basic needs, that you can still reach out and give a hand to help support that. So one of our biggest initiatives that we do, kicks off the school year, is our school challenge during football games. We reach out to some of our communities that are not Bright Future affiliates, and we do what's called a shoe drive. That's one of the very first initiatives that we do. It's getting close to winter time. We want to ensure that every child has a new or gently used pair of shoes to get them through the winter. And if you bring a pair of shoes in, then you get into the football games free. Now you have to talk to the school to get that approved, but overwhelmingly, you know, if you use one football game, it's amazing how many pair of shoes that you can get. And it's not just your school that's bringing the shoes. You spread the awareness to the other school as well, and they get to get into the football game for free also. Last year we had over 300 pair of shoes donated just to our school. As well, any shoes that were brought in from the opposing team school, they got to take home and use for children of need in their school. So it's not only spreading awareness within our community, but it's also spreading awareness in the communities around us. Basketball season, we do underclothes drive, so socks and underwear, stockings and hats. And again, we reach out to another school. And last year was really the first time that we allowed the student body to run that. And they did overwhelmingly very successful. They met as a school body with the other opposing schools, and they learned a lot about the needs within the communities and focused on what they felt was the biggest need, even focusing on sizes of underwear and socks that the schools felt like they needed. The other things that we do that support initiatives that aren't Bright Future related, one specifically is called our Just For Me program. How many of you are familiar with the backpack program? So the Just For Me program is what we support the backpack students in the summertime. And this was a community member that came forward and said, our children go home in the summertime and they don't get to take a backpack with them. So they're out for almost 3 months without a weekend backpack. She gathered through her own efforts and her own networking ability, raised money to start the Just For Me program. This is the 3rd year that it's been running. And through her efforts, Bright Future has supported that. And now our children go home in the summertime, and twice a month they receive a huge shipment of food based on donations, financial donations from area businesses as well as individuals, and also grants awarded by harvesters. And this summer there was, this program was awarded or recognized for the efforts and the impact that it had on hungry children. And along with 15 other community projects focused on children, they were voted on as the #1 program and was awarded $10,000 to help support the children in our community over the summer months so that they can go home with food. And lastly, I would say when we launched our My 42 program, I think the biggest, I'm going to read this off so that I get it right, but the very first day after our launch, it was within an hour of our breakfast, we had a community member send a donation to our committee. And she said, this donation is to represent 42 fast food lunches that I shouldn't be eating anyway. $5 times 42 lunches equals $210. Thank you for all you do to brighten the lives of children and for helping me make better choices for how to best use this money. This way we all win. And to me, that just represents that it's just the little things. It's 42 pencils to donate to a classroom, or it's 42 bottles of glue, or it's 42 minutes of a Sunday afternoon going through your closet or your children's closet and pulling out clothes that they haven't worn in 42 weeks or 42 days and donating it to your school's clothing closet. So it's a vast array of things that could be supported and help support the children of your community. And I have a lot of people ask me, why did you get involved in Bright Futures? And for me, it's because you never know by looking at a child what kind of lifestyle is going on at home. I was a child of poverty, and I watched my mother drink herself and take drugs my entire childhood until I was finally taken away. I grew up in and out of foster homes. I was a ward of the state. I didn't know my father till I was 16. And I know what it felt like to me when I had one teacher take me out of class and take me into her office and feed me breakfast because she just knew I wasn't getting the proper nutrition. So you never know what happens. And for me, I want to make sure that I recognize the efforts of that teacher and 2 other community members in my lifetime that took a chance on me. And I didn't know how to say thank you then, but I know how to say thank you now. And this is the way for me to pay tribute to them. So Again, thank you for your time.
We really never know what effect we can have on people. And so that's a great story, and thank you for coming. Next we have Tracy Skaggs. Tracy is a Bright Futures coordinator in Carl Junction. Carl Junction was the first community to affiliate with Bright Futures after it began in Joplin, and she has been there since. So Tracy Skaggs.
I too have a timer up here, so I don't have to look at it. It's going to go off automatically. I have a short presentation to go. Thought some graphics might help this morning. First of all, I really know what goes on in my town, and after talking to folks last night and some of you around the tables today, I kind of starting to have a feel what's going on here in Poplar Bluff. So today, this is going to be in my town and in your town because there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of differences that we can celebrate too. The first one is that all of us here today are in the kid business. Every one of us, you may be selling insurance, you may be selling cars, but we're all in the kid business. You can take everything you do and relate it back to the reason you do what you do is for families, is for kids, is for your kids, your neighbors' kids, the kids at church. It's for all of our kids in our community. The next thing is that we're all working for the future. Does anybody here work for the past? Nobody. We're all here for the future. And the future are those kids. And every one of us here today want to help. And everyone out there wants to help. They do. They just haven't found what fits for them. They haven't found what really talks to their heart. I mean, I listen to Carrie, and I just think about it, I start to cry. But, when she talks about how she grew up and everything, and there's kids out there, and there's not one person who won't step up and help a child. And that is our future. The other thing is that Bright Futures in our community is not a social service agency. And those of you in the room that are work for a social service agency or run one, Bright Futures in our community is not that. I don't think it's that here in this community. We're a bridge. We're not here to compete. We're here to work with everyone here as a bridge to every organization, every business, every faith-based organization, every social service agency. We're all here to be the bridge to find those needs, to help meet those future needs for those children. Next slide. Just like here in your community, our community connections are business, faith-based organizations, social service agencies, parents, and schools. We're all part of this to invest in our kids and our future. And this is just a simple slide. It may be too small to really see, but we had several things going in our community before we linked up with Bright Futures. We had a food backpack program that served 65 kids. After Bright Futures and bringing in all those connections from the community, we're now up to, I think that's 180, I think is what we have up there. Then also the school supplies. Our Ministerial Alliance gave out school supplies at the beginning of every school year at an event that they held in conjunction with all of our churches. And they served about 45 kids. That was awesome. That was awesome. We did not have anything else like that. Bright Futures got in the picture, and we got all the rest of the community involved, not just the churches, and we're able to serve over 300 kids now. So adding all these connections is what Bright Futures is about bridging everybody together and making those connections. And I can't really see the puzzle pieces from here. That's supposed to be a heart. Heart with puzzle pieces. And really, all those connections are about finding where you fit in And it's there at the bottom of your program. It talks about how can you help, the time, talent, treasures. Those are the three things. We call it the triple T challenge in our community. Everybody's got one or multiple of those three. If you're a triplet, man, you've got it going. But some of us are just singles right now and can just do the time. Some of us can just have maybe some funds that we can do. Some of us maybe have the talent that we can maybe, I have a financial person who helps me with all the Bright Futures budgeting stuff. That's what she can do. That's her talent. That's what she can do. That's how she helps me. We can go to the next slide. One of the biggest questions that we get in our community is, how do you decide how to help? And I wanted to address this today because it is important to me. And it's something that, I think all of us would struggle with at times. And this is kind of telling on me. We had a family who came and as school was starting and said, we missed the school supply giveaway because we were in Hawaii for a month. And, I have to step back and say, it's not my job. It's not my job to decide if that family needs something. It's not my job to decide if those children need those things. It's not your job. It's not my job. If those children need school supplies, it's my job to make sure that they have the school supplies that they need. I do not know the situation about why that family was in Hawaii. Maybe someone else in their family paid for them to get there. I have no idea, but that's not for my decision to decide that. And I think every one of us sometimes face that about, does this kid really need shoes? Do they have a pair at home that they just don't like? So I just want to say that to everybody today. It's not our job. It's our job to love on the kids, to bring them up, to make sure they have the things that they need. And that's what our job is to be. I don't ever want to, I have to say that, so those things all go through our minds, I know that our program here in Poplar Bluff is run by social workers, and I know that they see that every day. Sometimes it's prioritizing the needs. What is the greatest need? And I think that that's key. Sometimes shoes may be the greatest need, but the reality is behind that there's probably something else. Maybe there's education in the home that needs. And one of the programs I wanted to talk about, and I don't really have a slide for this one. Who's running my slide? Back there in the back. But we have a program called Food for Families. We have the food backpack program, as you saw earlier on the screen. We serve about 180 kids each week. But that program was growing so big, and we were having trouble making sure that we had the funds to fund that program every week, and the supply raising and everything for all that program. So we decided to look at the core of the problem, and that problem is that those families do not have enough food resources. They don't have enough. They may be on all those government programs to help them get food, but that's just a temporary measure. That is it doesn't meet the whole need that they have. And so these families were going from Bright Futures to our Cross Lines, which is kind of a food pantry, to Helping Hands, which is another food pantry. And they're going everywhere trying to make sure that they try to meet those needs. And so we decided to have a Food for Families program. And we have 40 families in this program now, averaging about, I think that takes care of over 200 people. Every 2 weeks, we used to go every week. We've had to back it up to every 2 weeks. The families go through a parking lot, a drive-through parking lot in our school, and they can pick up groceries. And we have chicken, eggs, milk, all the things that a lot of times food pantries don't have. And we get these from local grocery stores. We get it from local food banks. So these families aren't having to drive to Joplin, to Carthage, everywhere they have to go around us to different towns to try to get all the things that they need. They come straight to us. All of these agencies are in the parking lot. We're all doing our share, loading their car with food. We also get to talk one-on-one with those families every 2 weeks. And I can't tell you how priceless that is. We get to keep track of those families and what's going on. We have short little conversations with them. We can see when they come in what's going on by what's on their face. And they will show it and they will tell us. Now, we've been doing this for almost 2 years now. So they know us, we know them, and that is the key. It's not just a family that needs a pair of jeans. We know that Susie and her family. We know that Susie, Billy, John, all the kids. We know all those kids in that family. And that is so key for us to know those families. And now we're starting education programs with that program. And so we're going to be having cooking classes, inviting them to cooking classes. We're giving them dried beans and rice, real whole rice. My 10-minute timer is going off here. But we're giving these things, and they don't know what to do with them. It's cheaper and easier to do processed foods or to drive through McDonald's. They don't know how to do good food and real food and how to process that. So that's one of the key things that we are trying to do. And I know that there's so many other programs that we have that I want to share, but we don't have the time. Do I have another slide? Oh yeah, the basics. Back to the basics. Involve everyone. Everyone that's here today, I think there's probably over 100 people here today. And hundreds of people outside those doors. Involve everyone. They just have to be asked. You stopped my alarm. It's not going to stop. Turn it over. And then make bright futures fit into your community. I talked about some of the differences and things that we're the same as in my community and your community, but you need to make sure that whatever you decide, it fits your community. And Bright Futures isn't a one-size-fits-all, but it is a one-size-fits-all. It's not okay, you know what I mean, sorry. And then always stay kid-focused. I love that we've got adults running everything, and sometimes we get wrapped up in our adult world. But stay kid-focused in what's best for the kids, and then don't be afraid to ask others for help. And I think that's my last slide. Yep, she says that's the last one. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Next, we have Peggy Fuller. She's the Vice President and Marketing Director of Southwest Missouri Bank. She's an original Bright Futures Steering Committee member from Joplin. She's a past chairman of the Bright Futures Joplin Advisory Board, and she's a strong business partner and a committed mentor. And so I'll introduce you, Peggy Fuller. Thanks, Peggy.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Gosh, it's great to be here. I've never been to Poplar Bluff before, and I really like it. I was telling some of the advisory board members last night that my husband always calls it Popular Bluff, and so I've always been interested in coming to Popular Bluff and meeting you all, and you've been very welcoming, and I appreciate it. I'm going to take you back to the beginning a little bit today, and by the way, Kim, I didn't bring my phone up here with a timer, so you're just going to have to stand up and wave at me, okay? Thank you. I'm going to take you back to the very beginning because I am very honored to be one of the founding members of the advisory board. And the way that came about was Kim Van and I were friends. She worked at the chamber, and we had gotten to know each other through my job at the bank. And she called me one day and she said, Peggy, you know, Dr. Huff and I are working on this new initiative. We don't really exactly know what it's going to entail yet. This is probably January of 2010, right? And she said, but you know, I'm interested in having you come help us, and would you come to a meeting? And you know, we're calling it the Brain Trust. And I said, ooh, you know, that makes me feel very smart. So she knew to appeal to my healthy ego, which you know isn't all that healthy, but anyway, it worked that time. And so we started meeting, and it was a small group of community people, faith-based representatives, social services representatives, and we started talking about what we could do. And this was really Dr. Huff's vision, because he felt, you know, he'd had years in the education world, and during the time that he was a teacher, a principal, then an administrator, then a superintendent, he told us a story in the very beginning, and Bright Futures is all about the stories, as you can hear today. He told us a story about how he always had trouble sleeping at night. You know, he would go to sleep and he would toss and turn because he knew that there were children that he felt were under his care as a leader that were going to bed hungry, or they were going to bed without a mattress to sleep on, or they were going to bed cold and without a blanket. And he knew in his heart that within that community of people, wherever he was, that the resources existed to help those children. They were already there, and it was simply a matter of bringing the right people together and communicating the needs and figuring out how we could get those resources into the families and the houses of the people that needed them. So that was really the basic beginning of Bright Futures. How do we pull these people together? As you heard Tracy say, you know, the people are out there, they want to help, and we just need a process, a way for them to do that. So the Brain Trust met, and we decided to have this breakfast, and we had a breakfast, and we invited all the community, just like you all are here today. It was very similar. And we told stories, and we asked people to step up and help. And at the end of that breakfast, you know, we were hoping, oh my gosh, maybe we'll make this call for volunteers, and maybe we'll have 3 or 4 people that will come help us. And so the breakfast was very powerful. I mean, we had some people telling stories, like Carrie alluded to her story, that were extremely emotional and touched hearts. And so when we made that call for volunteers at the end of the breakfast, we had like 50 people. And we said, oh my gosh, we've got 50 volunteers. We've got 50 people that want to help, and we don't have anything for them to do yet. So we've got to figure out what we want them to do. And that's how the ambassador visits that I know you all have already done in your community, that's how that came to be. It was a way to, you know, quickly put these people in place where they could be helpful. So we went around and we found out what the schools needed, and then we came up with now needs, that, you know, quick wins that we could show people that we were really serious. We were really serious about this. And it wasn't just another initiative. And so one of the now needs was that every school should open that fall, and this was, by then it was April, May of 2010, and we wanted to open school that fall with every school having 3 business partners and a faith-based partner, and we did it. We managed to do that. What we did, and now I'm going to kind of move into the business partner side of things, because that's really where I fit because of my work. We started with the Chamber's Business Education Partnership. Do you all have one of those at your chamber now, or have you in the past? We did in Joplin, and it had kind of lost its oomph over the years. You know, it wasn't real active, but we still had some businesses in town that were very involved in schools. And so that was kind of our core group, and we started with them, and then we just recruited out from there. And again, as Tracy mentioned, you know, people want to help. They are willing to help, and sometimes it's just a matter of asking them and then giving them a specific job to do. And the other thing that we did that was crucial to our success, and this is a great story, we decided in this small brain trust advisory board that we had at the time that we really didn't know enough about what was actually going on, you know, in our community and in the schools. And so we put together what turned out to be what we call now the Bright Futures Leadership Academy. But it really, in the beginning, was a way for community people to really learn what some of the issues are that teachers and administrators are facing. And, you know, I have 3 daughters. They've been out of school a while. They're all in their 20s now. But they all went all the way through Joplin Public Schools, and I felt like I was pretty educated about what was going on in the schools. You know, I was one of those involved parents and in and out of the schools a lot. But oh my gosh, you know, when we started delving into the real issues that people face in the schools and the things that these children were facing at home, I mean, it was eye-opening. And one of the things we did in the Leadership Academy, I think the second time we met, we had a policeman who was on our board, and he said, I'm going to take you around the community and I'm going to show you some of these problems that Joplin is facing right now. And so we all got on a bus, and he took us through one of our elementary schools that is in a very challenged neighborhood. And he turned the corner in front of the elementary school, and he started pointing out some meth houses. I mean, it was incredible. You know, these children were, and I know y'all might think I sound naive. I'm not naive. I mean, I just hadn't seen it. And there's something about seeing it that brings it home. I mean, you can read the paper and you can read about the problems and you can read about the crime and you can read about people that are preying on children, but until you experience it and see it and physically understand the proximity and all those things that are happening, it has a lot of power. But that bus tour we talk about a lot. I mean, it was really one of the kind of turning points of engagement with the people that were on that bus. He took us to a homeless camp, and we met with a gentleman that was living in the homeless camp, which was, you know, right off one of our main highways. I mean, you just walked, we walked through the fields to get to this tent where this gentleman was living. And he told us, you know, the policeman had gone the day before, I think with Kim, right? And y'all had gotten permission to bring us back the next day. And he said, you know, would you mind talking to them about your situation? And he said, sure, you know, I'll talk to anybody. But he told us that he had 3 children that were living with his mother at one of our, you know, in one of our neighborhoods, going to one of our elementary schools, that because he knew he had dropped out at age 15 and he couldn't take care of his kids, and so they were living with their grandmother and going to school. And these are, you know, children that we need to be aware of and helping. So we got the buzz going. Everybody wanted to be involved. And then the tornado hit. And, you know, that kind of, I mean, certainly it was a great blessing that many of us were already involved in the schools and were welcome in the schools and we could help. And, you know, the schools were hit very hard, as you know. So after the probably 2 years of really dealing with tornado-related issues, we began again to go back to the basics of Bright Futures a couple of years ago. And one of the things that I wanted to tell you today is that as you get deeper into it, just realize that, you know, you have several elementary schools in different centers, which I learned about last night, and different schools and different buildings are going to buy into this differently, and you just need to honor the differences. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do things, but the leadership of Bright Futures is really up to the leader in the school or his or her representative. And they're just going to be different. And so you can't make every school look exactly alike, and you just need to honor that. But the one thing that's so important in Bright Futures is that nothing takes the place of relationships. It's all about relationship building. And we have, I insist on calling them Bright Futures Councils rather than Site Councils, because, you know, it's all about the branding, because I'm a marketing director. But, you know, we have people all the time saying, you know, I want to be a Bright Futures Council member, and they might be a small business, and, you know, but I can't come to the meetings. I can't really be involved, but I'll send you a check every now and then, or, you know, I'll help with your carnival. I'll send, you know, giveaways over to your carnival. And that's fine. I mean, we're never going to turn help away, but ideally, you want people there, because there is nothing that takes the place of sitting around tables together like you all are doing today and getting to know each other. There's just, it just doesn't work as well unless you kind of insist on doing that. So it's ongoing relationship development. Thank you. With our partners, just real quickly about the business partners, we get business partners together at least twice a year, and it's for that relationship development. We have a volunteer breakfast every year where we honor a partner of the month or of the year and a volunteer of the year, and it's very celebration oriented. And then we do a partner gathering where we do some training, and we allow our partners to hear from each other and share best practices and that kind of thing. So just to conclude, I really think that you all have a great start. I mean, I loved the stories we heard last night, and you're really doing so well, and it's very exciting to see this going on in Poplar Bluff. And I know that Bright Futures Connections for Success. I mean, y'all are all connected, and now you're connected with us. So you can call us. We have a relationship going on now, and we are all going to be available to you to help you as you move forward. Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to introduce Kim Van. Kim is the Executive Director for Bright Futures USA and the original Bright Futures Joplin Coordinator. She's been involved since the beginning. So Kim Van. Good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. Great. How are you? Well, I wanted to point out that Peggy Fuller is living proof that marketing works. So anybody that doubts it, her story about the brain trust, I've heard, I can't even tell you how many times since the beginning. But in all seriousness, in the beginning, we strategically chose a group of 6 people that had different spheres of influence in our community, and she most certainly was an important part of that. So thank you for your initial belief in us and for coming to the table just because you were asked to do something that you had no idea. We had no idea at that time. This morning, I just want to share with you 3 core values that we hold very dear in every Bright Futures community across the nation. And one thing we've not talked about at this point is that we currently have 39 affiliate communities in 7 different states across the nation, serving almost 170,000 children. And knowing how we started in Joplin, putting those 6 initial people together for that brain trust and seeing where it's come, it just warms my heart. And sometimes as we talk about Bright Futures, we talk about the number of communities it's in, but what's really important was that last number I shared with you. It's how many children we're affecting day in and day out. And I've been very fortunate to be able to walk into many communities that we serve and those that are interested in bringing Bright Futures home to the place they call home. And the one thing that I find in common is that every single community has the desire to help and support their children. And regardless of what business you're in, what faith-based organization you belong to, what your political affiliation is, one thing that we can almost always all agree on is the fact that children deserve to be taken care of, and they didn't ask to be born into the situations that they're born into. And so as a community, it's up to us to ensure that they have a safe place to grow up in. And I truly enjoy working with the people of your community and have been able to for the past year. In Joplin, in the beginning, we didn't know the needs existed. And that's what we see in every community that we walk into. There are many, many people that are willing to help, but they just may not be aware of the needs that exist. And we found the one place that we can always identify those needs for children are in the schools, because those teachers and those lunch workers and those janitors and those bus drivers see these children day in and day out, and they know what kind of home life they come from. I can walk into virtually any cafeteria, and the people that are working in that cafeteria can instantly point out the children in the room who may not have the proper nutrition they need, who are hungry. And those children may look like the most well-adjusted children you've ever seen. Those children also may be the children that are sent to the principal's office on a regular basis because they're acting out. And maybe the reason they're acting out is simply because they're hungry. And wow, how simple would it be to fix that issue? So quickly getting to the first core value that I want to talk to you about is that we believe the resources exist in every community. They don't need to be recreated. They just simply, the resources need to be matched with the need. And sometimes that requires us to think about resources differently. I'm going to tell you a really quick story about a high school student at our local tech center that wanted to become a welder. And he was very, very talented and had the ability to do so, but he didn't have the supplies he needed. And he came from a family where it wasn't a possibility that they would help him with it. And he wore size 13. And at the time, I didn't know that steel-toed work boots were quite so expensive until we were made aware that all that stood in between this young man and him being able to enter a welding program at our high school was a pair of size 13 steel-toed work boots. So that seemed like an easy enough fix. And I saw earlier the superintendent shared your Facebook page, and we had a Facebook page like that in Joplin. And I thought, well, we'll just put it out there. But for some reason, I had started looking to see what a pair would cost, and they were quite expensive. And I called our local Cross Lines, and that was an organization that would typically provide something like that for our students, but a size 13 is not a common size, come to find out. And no one in town had a size 13 steel-toed pair of work boots sitting on their shelves. So we did decide to utilize our Facebook page, and we put that need out there, and instantly a woman replied, and she said, I have a pair out in my garage. I bought them for my husband several years ago. He's never worn them one time. She went out to her garage, brought them to the school, left them with the counselor, and that young man was able to enter the welding program. That was a resource we would have never considered a resource in the past. The second thing I want to share with you is that everyone in your community has something to give, whether it's time, talent, or treasure. And Tracy touched on that earlier. And we had two ladies that, if you would have looked at them prior to Bright Futures, you probably would not have assumed that they had anything to contribute to the school district. And they had time, talent, and treasure. I believe they were disabled. I don't know that for sure, but I don't believe that they worked. So they had time. The talent that they had was the fact that they were able to crochet and or knit. I don't know which of the two. I think maybe both. And the treasure that they had were the yarn. I guess they had skeins and skeins of yarn in their closet because that was something they've done over the years, whether it was a hobby or for a need. And they partnered through a faith-based organization with a local elementary school in Joplin that was one of our higher needs elementary schools. And there were about 250 children in that building, and the principal one day mentioned that, so many kids were coming to school and they didn't have the proper hats or gloves to wear. These women, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, hand crocheted or knitted a hat for every single child in that building. Now, if you saw a picture, and I wish I would have brought it, if you would have seen a picture of the children with those hats on, they might not have been the warmest hats that you've ever seen in your life because they had holes, they were decorative. But those kids knew someone loved them, and they took better care of those hats and gloves and scarves that they were given than if we would have gone out and bought brand new Nike hats for them to wear. So never discount anyone in your community. Everyone has something to give. Lastly, I want to talk about the fact that all of us are better together than any one of us alone. And the reason I chose to go last is because I didn't want to take a story away from anyone, and I'm so glad no one told this story today. We had 3 children that went to another one of our elementary schools, and then the principal would tell you she never had problems with them. They came to school, regular attendance, got along with their classmates, and all of a sudden, over a 3 or 4 month period of time, their discipline referrals to the office started rising, and they started having issues with these children. And she had sent in requests several times for hygiene items for these children. And after we saw the same name come across several times, we picked up the phone and called and said, hey, we're happy to fill this need, but do you know what's at the root of the problem? Because although we want to make sure every child's basic needs are met, we don't want to just be a Band-Aid. We want to get to the root of the problem, like we discussed earlier. So the principal had a conversation with the mother and found out that the husband in the family had lost his job. And he was not an educated man. He had dropped out of school, and the job he had worked was labor. And because he was, a little older and he didn't have a high school diploma, he was having difficulty finding a job. This was a family that I would categorize as working poor, and they didn't know how to work the system. And there was help available to them, but they didn't know how to access it. Well, come to find out, the water heater in their house had gone out. And the reason the kids were having hygiene issues were because they couldn't take a bath or a shower with warm water at home. And I have a son and a daughter, and I can tell you, I don't know how many times when we had warm water that I had trouble getting my son into that bathroom to take a shower before he went to bed at night or in the morning before school. So I can only imagine what it was like with ice cold water, or water that you warm up in a microwave or on the stove. So we decided that's an easy problem to fix. I called one of our local school board members because he happened to be in the industry. He had a lot of connections in the construction industry, and I said, hey, we don't expect anyone to give this to us. We have some money to buy it, but could you help us purchase a water heater at cost? And he made a phone call to a local store that provided them, and they happened to have one in the back that they couldn't sell because it had a big, ugly dent in it. But functionally, it worked fine. He said, hey, I'll give this to you. So that was great. Then he called one of his friends who was a plumber, and he said, hey, can you help us install this? And the gentleman said, of course I can. I'll have to do it after regular business hours because I'm committed during normal business hours. And so one evening, they went over to install the water heater in this family's house. The father, who was a very proud man, helped as the installation was taking place, and it just so happened the plumber was swamped. He had more work than he could keep up with himself. And so at the end of the day, he asked the gentleman, he said, hey, would you mind, do you have time? He didn't know the entire story, but I've got some extra work. Would you like to help? And out of it, the father got a job. And to me, that is a perfect example of the entire community working together, starting at the school level all the way through the business community. And, there were just multiple people who pulled together to help this family. And no longer did the referrals to the office take place with the children after that. That was what was great. Their self-esteem was so low, that's what was causing the issues. So I'm sure I've hit my 10-minute mark, and you are going to be very blessed to hear our last speaker. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back over. I almost introduced Steve.
That's all right. That's all you could have. Next, we have Steve Patterson, who's Director of Missions at Spring River Baptist Association. He's been involved with Bright Futures from close to the very beginning. And have Steve come and talk about the faith-based partnerships. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve.
Well, maybe you've heard about the little boys that went to church together one time, and there was a little Catholic boy and a Baptist boy, and they went to one another's churches. And when they went there, the little Baptist boy said, now, why is it when you go to the pew that you cross yourself before you get in the pew? And he told him. He said, what do the candles mean up here at the front? And he told him. He said, what is that little pool of water back there? And he said, that's the baptistry. And he said, ours is a lot bigger. But anyway, he told him what it was. And as he explained all of the things, then the little Catholic boy went with the Baptist boy. They went to church together, and a lady was walking in with a casserole. And he said, what does that mean? He said, it means we're going to have a fellowship dinner afterwards. All of our Baptist folks will know what I'm talking about. And said, well, why do they take the offering? And he explained that. And then the preacher got up, and he took off his watch, and he laid it on the pulpit, and he says, what does that mean? He says, it means nothing at all. So I will honor my time, okay? When we always have a good time, our group. You know, when we first started with Bright Futures, I was invited to that very first breakfast. I didn't get to be in the brain trust because it have some lacking qualities there. But I was very blessed to be at that very first breakfast and to hear those stories. And then to hear our superintendent of schools say, you know, we would like to have the whole community on board. And he said, that includes the faith community. Folks, we'd been 50 years with the school saying to the faith community, you stay out there. Don't come inside. This is not your place. Now, they'd take our kids and they'd take our tax money, but they didn't want us. But our superintendent said, we want you because you love kids and we love kids. Folks, they're our kids too. And so as we stepped on board, I said to the faith community there in Joplin, because we had worked a crusade together years before. I knew most of the guys that were in other denominations, and I'd been the chairman of that crusade. And so as I worked with them, I said, guys, this is different. Come get involved in this. And as they began to explain the kinds of things that were needed, I said to our Bright Futures local group, I said, guys, if you think that the faith community is where you're going to get your money, you are sadly mistaken. Because they're struggling to make it themselves. But they are people of faith. And they are people who know how to get in touch with God. And they are people who know how to love those kids and how to bring those volunteers to the table. And when we were first charged with some responsibilities, I was the co-chairman of the faith-based group, and we gathered them all together, and I said, now guys, they've asked us to help with a group called Lunch Buddies, because Big Brothers and Big Sisters wasn't providing enough volunteers. They had 15 lunch buddies for, you know, the 7,000 students in Joplin. And there were requests for so many more. And then the Trek program. I know, Peggy, you were a Trek coach there in Joplin. Together, Reaching Every Kid. It's a mentoring type program run by our Chamber of Commerce. Neither one of them had a faith emphasis. But they needed volunteers, and so they said, could you give us some volunteers? And so we took that challenge, and we brought it to our churches, and we said to them, we need some people who'll eat lunch with kids once a week. You'll have to go through a background check. You'll probably have to pay for that background check. But let me just tell you, those kids need you. Let me tell you, when you're somebody's lunch buddy or you're somebody's lunch pal, you come in there and you kind of huddle the kids up. They gather around you. You have a great time. You're somebody special to those kids. And we pitched that to our churches. And we went from 15 to 150 lunch buddies. Just like that. Our Trek program, we had 9 Trek coaches in Joplin the year before. We pitched that to our churches, and they had to go through background checks. Anybody who's in touch directly with students goes through a background check. But they did that, and we went from 9 to 90. In both cases, it went 10 times as many when the faith-based community was on board. Now, what I pointed out to our local board was this. You already had connections with the businesses. You already had connections with social services. You already had PTOs, and you already had the schools. The piece you didn't have was those boots on the ground who come out of the pews of the churches. Now, let me tell you something. We're at the right time to hit the wave. If you ever watch surfers, man, they'll let waves pass until they see the one, and then their eyes light up. And they get ready to get on that board. And boy, when they hit the wave, they're able to ride that and maybe even make the pipeline, you know. Well, let me just share with you, this is the time. This is the time for us to step up, because you see, Bright Futures is simply the surfboard for us to get on board and help those students. Because you see, out there in our churches, and I don't care what denomination, you're going to be hearing from your pastors, and you have been hearing, I promise you have, get out of the pews and get into the field. Okay? And that's happening everywhere. I think there's a God thing going on there, all right? But God cares about those kids. And He wants you to help connect those people with those kids. Let me give you a little secret here. When it comes to involving the faith community, be specific. Don't give a y'all come kind of call. They won't. Go to a Sunday school class and say, would you be a partner for Eugene Field School? Go to your senior adult group and say, hey, you know what? They're needing some mentors down here. Would you all take on that as a challenge? And pastors, I know some of you are here. I visited with you. You're the key. You're the key. You can go to those churches and you can say to those people, look, this is not our place to go in there and evangelize. You can't do that. You're going to create problems for the schools if you do that. But let me tell you something. You build relationships and you build connections with families. And guess what? When you go to Walmart and those kids see you with their parents, they run up to you and they say, hey, he comes to our school. And the parents say, why do you come to their school? Well, I'm the faith-based partner. I'm the pastor down at such and such. You know, at Walmart, you can invite anybody to church. So, you know, there are just tons of ways to be connected, but understand that when we provide the avenue in Bright Futures for the connection in our communities, it makes all the difference in one kid's life, another kid's life, another kid's life, and 175,000 kids' lives now nationwide. In July, they asked me, the faith-based guy, to be the president of the board of directors for the national organization. And guys, I thought, what? We weren't even welcome in the schools just a few years ago, but now we're saying to schools all over our nation, get on board. And guess what? They've been waiting. They're like a racehorse at the gate. They're kind of fauching at the bits to say, when are they going to open the gates? Folks, Bright Futures is opening the gates. And it's time for us to get out of the gates and get into the fields. So I want to thank you for this, and I want to tell you, I'm excited about what's happening in Poplar Bluff. And one of the things that we need, and you are doing this already, but it will need to ramp up further. And I gained some great ideas. Carrie, I like that one about the connecting through the football games and the shoes and all that. That was cool stuff. I leaned over to Tracy and said, Tracy, that'd work in our area. I went to Carl Junction High School. I live in Webb City, which is the opposing school. But you see, all of our schools are close to one another. You've got that down here in southeast Missouri. And so we need regional hubs of this to push it out to other communities. You know who they are. You have family there. You have friends there. You have relatives there. Connect with them. Be an ambassador to those communities. Help to reach out to more and more and more students. Because you see, that's who this is about. The students' success. Help us make them a success. All right? God bless.
I'll echo a little bit of what Steve said. You know, we do have obligations as a public school district, but we don't have, there's nothing but, said you can't bring love into a school. Right. And so what better way to do that and reach out to faith-based people and let them come into our schools. This is a point where we have some time for question and answers, and I'm just maybe going to moderate that maybe if they may have another point they want to make real quick, but just open it up real quick. And I know some of you are on a schedule and don't feel like if you have to go. But just want to, and if you want to stick around and ask some of these folks some questions in your area, please feel free to. But does anyone have any questions regarding our panel and ideas there that they'd like to have them speak to?
It's that all of us are better together than any one of us are alone.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I met several of you that are on site councils, or as Peggy says, Bright Futures councils at different schools. And from our discussions last night at dinner, I found out that that is a struggle in some schools. And that's one of the reasons why I put the same and different thing, and I didn't really hit on that. But not every site council, and I think Kim said this too, is going to look like another school's site council. But you've got to find what works in that site council. At our high school, our site council struggled for a few years trying to figure out what their goal was, what their mission was, what their purpose was. And so finally it came to light that we had an incoming freshman class that had 15 students that were considered high risk because of attendance. So that site council took on that one single mission to help those 15 children with attendance. So we created a reward system for attendance. We created a mentor system or program for those 15 students for their freshman year. And we had one coordinator who kind of coordinated all those people getting through to that. So it wasn't a lot of work on the site council, and that was their one single mission. And I tell you what, out of those 15 students that we predicted by their attendance probably were not going to make it to graduation, this past spring, we graduated 13 of those 15 kids. And we didn't mentor past the freshman year because the next year we took on the next group of freshmen. And we just identified those 15 kids. And so each site council needs to figure out what their mission is. That's what, our schools are grade level centered. So in our second and third grade building, we know that they, again, were struggling. And I think that that's hard for site councils to kind of figure out. It's hard for principals to say, oh, we're fine, we don't need anything, and it's hard to figure out what those needs might be. So, but we were in the office one day, and a little boy comes in all upset. He needs to call his mom. It's his birthday, and he forgot his birthday snacks. And the teachers made a big deal in class about it being his birthday, and he forgot his birthday snacks. Well, I knew by looking at the kid he probably wasn't going to be able to bring birthday snacks. So we started a birthday closet in the vault at the school. We had a couple shelves in the vault, and so we stocked sets of about 25, 30 snacks. So that's just another way that we started, and that program started rolling. It's gone into some of our other buildings now, and now we've partnered with Hostess. In a way, that's good because Hostess brings all their damaged cartons and just stocks that closet. We never even see them. They just keep it stocked. But it kind of lost our focus of our groups, and then we had to go find another purpose for our site council. So as you're sitting around the table, and I met some people from the junior high site council today, and some other site councils, and the kindergarten center site council, and you just have to keep looking for what that mission is to keep you really involved.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, they're going to be here for a while. I'm not going to hold the whole group, and you may have a question you don't want to ask out in front of everybody. But please, if you want to get involved, write something on your yellow sheet. Let us know. Let Carrie and Donna contact them. But thank you again for coming out today. We've had great turnouts for these events, and we've got a great community, and we just want to do more together. Thank you.